Peace. So I'll give y'all a minute to get on. So tonight, for a little bit, I wanted to just go through some lessons and just share some understanding of the lessons. Peace. Yo, so the reason why I wanted to go live and build is for those of you who had an opportunity to check out the pre-recorded video of Wesley Muhammad at Mas Mariam responding to Paul Guthrie's research. He talked a little bit about a plus degree known as General Monk, and he also talked a little bit about a specific lesson within the Supreme Wisdom book, within 120. And he probably spent like a couple of hours, discussing that. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out his video, after I build on this, then I definitely encourage you to go and check it out. Can you touch on the validity of the monk degree? Yeah, I just mentioned it. But so today is the 13th, right? And as the 5%, we deal with supreme mathematics, which means each number or numeral corresponds to a specific principle. So 13 represents knowledge and understanding. If you take it to the 13th letter in the alphabet, that's the letter M, and that represents master. So one of the differences between a person that would be considered a master and someone that is not considered a master is knowledge and understanding. And that is one of the differences when it comes to dealing with lessons or 120, as we call it, or degrees. Some people have these lessons in a Supreme Wisdom book, and a lot of times they don't really have much understanding to those lessons, and that is one of the reasons why they can't really consider themselves mastering 120 or mastering those degrees. Now, for those of you who had a chance to check out Wesley Muhammad's video, he talked about a plus degree called General Monk. And in the 5%, when we say plus degrees, we're specifically talking about individual research that people have done that help supplement our research or our education when it comes to what we're learning within our degrees or what we're learning within 120. So a plus degree, it depends on who's doing the research, basically how valid it is, and that is how you distinguish what it actually is, the weight of what that research is. So it's nothing that as a 5%er people hold sacred, unless that is some some research that someone with some integrity and someone that you can actually identify as being the author of that plus degree is something that we would actually look at as valuable. When the father, who is the founder of the 5% Nation, came back home after some time being institutionalized, he made sure his young 5%ers just destroyed or burned all of their plus degrees, because some people were getting into some spaced out ideas and concepts and striving to pass it off as actual research. And when he got an opportunity to see this stuff, he's like, yo, y'all got to get rid of this shit. Nobody sanctioned y'all or gave y'all, authority to do this, because a lot of it is poison. A lot of it wasn't right and exact. So in the 5% nation, we don't put a lot of weight on no plus degrees. We're very skeptical of that. Oh, this hoodie right here, my brother Infinite designs them. I'll put the information in the comments when I get an opportunity. So as 5%ers, we don't put a lot of emphasis on no plus degrees, you know. And if it's a person's individual research, people scrutinize that a lot. So even if I wrote something, you know, people is not just because I am who I am. They just gonna take it to the head and be like, oh, I ain't gotta really be studious and research it. Nah, people gonna be looking at it under a microscope, you know, and that's how plus degrees are. So the general monk plus degree that Wesley Muhammad was actually talking about in his video, and you know, going into striving to explain it and all of this other stuff, 5%ers was sitting back and looking at that shit like, because typically when we build and get together in a cipher, right, we don't build and get together in a cipher and strive to show and prove plus degrees, because that is someone's understanding. So I'm not going to take someone else's understanding and present that into the cipher and be trying to show and prove somebody else's understanding. We do research and gain knowledge or strive to become aware of various different things and extract the wisdom from whatever it is that we become aware of or whatever it is that we know. And then we share our own understanding, but we're not taking someone's understanding and then trying to pass that shit off, you know. So I've never been in a cipher, and I've had knowledge for over wisdom cipher years, over 20 years. I've never been in a cipher where somebody's coming in there trying to prove General Monk and exiling the devil and all of this other stuff, you know. So anyway, one of the things that you will find interesting about Wesley Muhammad's video is, even though he talked about that plus degree, he was using a lot of the traditional language that the Nation of Islam used back when Malcolm was around. It's something that you really don't hear nowadays, which is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught this, or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us this, or he was saying that a lot. That's traditional First Resurrection Nation of Islam. That is the way they spoke. All you got to do is just go back on YouTube or strive to listen to any kind of recordings of Malcolm and some of the ministers from back in that time. And damn, you're always going to hear the phrase, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. A lot of these folks today, you rarely ever hear them using that specific phrase in reference to something that's coming out of their mouth. Because the paradigm has changed. They're basically moving in a different direction, and they're not as aligned with those teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the First Resurrection as brothers and sisters of the past have been. And that's why you don't hear that language nowadays. But he was using a lot of that language in the video, and I was like, yeah, that, you know, I wonder how long that shit is going to last, right? So anyway, even though he was discussing like elements of the exiling of the devil and the root of civilization and all this other stuff, he did not quote the lesson that he specifically gets that from. And I don't even think he read it in his Supreme Wisdom book, because I know he doesn't know these lessons verbatim, or he doesn't know them by heart. So he's kind of reading through it and explaining whatever his research was about, trying to show and prove that there was an oasis between the lower Caucasus Mountains and the root of civilization. You know, it was about 2 hours long. It was, if it was a child watching that, that shit would have been torture. It was difficult for me, and I'm a studious person, to sit and really listen through it. Okay, I see he tuned in. Thanks, Wesley, for tuning in. I was just mentioning you. So, as youth, that would have been very difficult to sit and listen through that, because it really didn't have any present significance to why this was even important, aside from responding to some of the research that Paul Guthrie was doing
about the exile and the devil and the root of civilization, this, that, and the third, right? So anyway, putting all of that aside, the lesson that he was actually talking about is the fourth lesson, which is in part of our lessons called Muslim lessons number 1. So anyway, the fourth lesson, it asks the question, why, I'm sorry, hold on. Why do we run Yaqub and his maid devil from the root of civilization? I'm not reading anything. Why do we run Yaqub and his maid devil from the root of civilization over the hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it, Europe? What does it mean in the EU and ROPE? How long ago? What did the devil bring with them? What kind of life did the devil live in? And how long before Musa came to teach the devil the forgotten trick knowledge? Now, the answer to that lesson is because they started causing trouble amongst the righteous people, accusing the righteous people, telling lies, and causing them to fight and kill one another. Yaqub was an original black man and father of the devil. He taught the devil how to do this devilishment. The root of civilization is in Arabia at the holy city of Mecca, which means when knowledge and wisdom of the original man started, when the planet was first founded. We ran the devil from the root of civilization over the hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it, Europe. EU means hillsides. ROPE means the rope to bind in. It was 6,019 years ago. We took everything from them but their language and made them walk every step of the way. It was 2,200 miles. He went savage and lived in the caves of Europe. Musa came 2,000 years later and taught the devil how to live respectful lives, how to build homes for themselves, and some trick knowledge Yaqub had taught them, which was devilishment, stealing, telling lies, and how to master the original man. Musa was a half original man, a prophet whose birth was predicted by the 23 scientists in the year 1, 15,019 years ago. That is the way that the lesson, if I had the book in front of me, that is exactly how it would be read. And you see that I know it right here. That's something that Wesley Muhammad didn't do, because he doesn't know that lesson like that. But he did talk a little bit about some of the things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. He used a plus degree, which isn't something that we put weight on as the 5% in terms of our understanding of the lesson that I just quoted to you. And I just wanted to take some time to elaborate on that and to give you a little bit of understanding of what that lesson actually means. Because if you listen to his talk, you would walk away thinking like, okay, why the fuck do I need to know that there's an oasis between here and there? Like, how do you use that right now? Is that something that you can use in your community to help resurrect or help bring resources to your youth? Is that something that is, I mean, and I've seen people like, oh, he bodied Paul Guthrie and shit. And I'm like, that's your understanding of that lesson? That you're trying to document, okay, that you walk this many steps and all this. If that's the case, shit, the Appalachian Trail is the longest hiking trail in the world, and that's 2,200 miles. We could sit and talk about that shit. You know, you start in Georgia and you end up in Maine. That's 2,200 miles, the Appalachian Trail. You know, and if I'm sitting here talking about this, it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? What's the significance of that? So what I wanted to do is to give you a 5%er perspective. And this is not the only perspective of this lesson, but I wanted to give you a 5%er perspective of how we actually utilize that lesson each and every day. We're not walking around trying to measure and figure out if it's a goddamn oasis between the Mecca and the lower Caucasus Mountains. Okay, how do you use that? So, let's build about this lesson. That's the fourth lesson, so there's 3 lessons that are actually prior to that. The first lesson is, why isn't the devil settled on the best part of the planet Earth? The second lesson is, why did Musa have a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC? The third lesson is, why do we let a half-original man like Columbus discover the poor part of the planet Earth? Each one of those lessons refers to the devil, and it gives you a different method or tactic in how to actually deal with the devil. Some of it may have a historic reference in terms of an actual event that took place. Other things, there is no historical record of an event that actually took place.
but it gives you an allegory or a sense of how you can utilize this method or this tactic dealing with present day adversity, because that's what a devil actually represents. It represents, or he or she represents, adversity, but at the same time, it's not necessarily just someone that is outside of one's own self. So anytime we look at these lessons as a 5%er, we're looking at that as, what are we learning about our own self? How does this apply to our everyday life? We're not just looking at something as a historical event, but what is the significance of this right now? So again, the question asks us, why do we run Yaqub and his maid devil from the root of civilization over the hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it, Europe? What is the meaning of EU and ROPE? How long ago? What did the devil bring with them? What kind of life did the devil live then? And how long before Musa came to teach the devil the forgotten trick knowledge? So if you're looking at it from a face value perspective, right? You're talking about people being run from the root of civilization over a hot Arabian desert into some caves, and then someone sent sometime after that to give them some sense of civilization, right? So when you're looking at that, one of the things that that lesson is talking to you about is mercy. So the first part of that lesson, it tells you why this even took place to begin with, because they started causing trouble amongst the righteous people, accusing the righteous people, telling lies, and causing them to fight and kill one another. Now, in the Message to the Black Man, Donald Elijah Muhammad talks about how this actually took place and how the Caucasians or devils came back into the root of civilization and turned the whole city upside down within 6 months. So what happened is we strived to gather up all those that we could find. There were some that were left behind. All those that were we could find, and then we took them along this course into an exile. Right? Now, if you're looking at that on face value, then that whole 2-hour thing that Wesley Muhammad was talking about, that may have some importance to you. But if you're looking at it in terms of, how the hell does this have to do with me today? Now you have to get some understanding about what that lesson actually means. So now, consider the fact that sometimes you may deal with a person or be in a place or have a scenario going on that you recognize that some people are causing trouble amongst you, right? This lesson is giving you one methodology or one tactic on how to deal with people that you recognize who are causing trouble amongst you. Accusations, and that is one of the names of the devil. He's an accuser, but he's also an adversary. So when you recognize that, the methodology that this lesson is teaching you about is you have to take everything from them, but your language, and make them walk every step of the way. The first thing that it tells you is that Yaqub was an original black man and father of the devil. He taught the devil how to do this devilishment. So sometimes when you see people who are doing certain things, you have to be conscious and honest enough to evaluate yourself to consider if you enabled this person to do that bullshit to begin with. So that is a self-check that has to first take place. And that's why in that lesson, is before it even gets into anything else, it says Yaqub was the original black man and father of the devil. He taught the devil how to do this devilishment. Right? So that's the first thing. Before you start accusing somebody and talking about they doing this, that, and the third, you have to sit there and think, yo, did I just enable this motherfucker to do that? Did I father that? Because it changes the whole perspective on how you need to handle that situation. If you can honestly look at yourself and see if you played a role or a part in enabling this person to do what it is that they're doing. You might have just been running your mouth. And with that information, they took it and started causing trouble. Some people just might have thought that, hey, you might have been cool with them sharing certain things. But now you got this whole scenario that started because you might have just been loose at the lips, right? That's just one example. After that, it talks about the root of civilization being in Arabia, which means where knowledge and wisdom of the original man started when the planet was first founded. So when you take a look at Arabia on a map, it actually resembles a human heart. Just go on Google Maps, compare what Arabia looks like, and look at it in relationship to a human heart. It looks the exact same way. So when we say that the root of civilization is in Arabia, we're talking about the root of civilization is really within your heart. If it's not in your heart to be civilized, then that is not where knowledge and wisdom is going to be founded. So knowledge and wisdom is 1 and 2. If you take it to the 12th letter in the alphabet, that's the letter L. That is love. So you really have to have love in your heart for civilization in order for you to found anything. That is really the root of civilization. So if you take that to the 17th degree in our 1 to 40s, it tells you what the meaning of civilization is. It says one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, refinement, and is not a savage in the pursuit of happiness. So when we're looking at this lesson, we're not just sitting here thinking like, oh, it all started in Mecca. Mecca is the root of your civilization, where your heart is actually what orientates the knowledge and the wisdom. So your Mecca may be different than somebody else's based upon the way that your heart is orientated. And that is really what roots your sense of civilization. So now why is it important to run the devil from that root of civilization? Because if your heart is a certain way, you're orientated a certain type of way, you shouldn't have people around you that's causing trouble. You shouldn't have people around you that's like that, right? So now, in this lesson, when it talks about we exile the devil from this root of civilization over a hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it, Europe, and it also talks about we made them walk every step of the way. Why is it important for a person to walk every step of the way? Because you want them to be cognizant of why you are exiling them. So in the lesson it says that we took everything from them but their language. Everything from them but their language. So what that's saying is, I'm not fucking with you. I speak. You know people like that? That's been on some bullshit, causing trouble, this, that, and the third. They may be people who you work with. When you see people like that, if you got to work with them, they may be in your family, whatever, be cordial to them. Speak hi and bye. But in terms of trading amongst them and sharing resources and doing all of this other shit, no. Take everything from them but your language. Speak, but just keep that shit just like that. Now here's the mercy in that, right? You make them walk every step of the way. Make them walk every step of the way. Then when you exile them to the hillsides. So what's a hill? A hill is a man-made elevation of land. Why would you even put a person in a place where they're in some elevated state or elevated sense of land that you made? Because you want to put them where you can see their ass. That's why. You know what I mean? So a rope to bind in simply means that. You want to keep this person a certain distance from you. Deal with this person with a long-handled spoon. The reason why I'm telling you about this particular lesson is because I'm going to go back and show you some of the other methodologies or tactics that are outlined in other lessons. This one right here is a very elaborate and sophisticated way to deal with adversity. Not just a person that's outside of you that's on some bullshit, but when you recognize certain things that you do that are habits or routines that you want to dismantle. So when you look at it, any kind of routine, especially if it's negative, if you want to dismantle it, you have to look at the shit like it's a watch. If you take one mechanism out of the watch, the whole watch don't work. And that's oftentimes how you have to do certain things that you may be struggling with or that may be posing conflict or adversity to your growth and development. You have to dismantle it one piece at a time so that the whole routine won't work. And that's one of the reasons why in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, right? NA and like Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of times they talk about disassociating yourself with people, places, and things because they're triggers. You know, these things can trigger you back into a routine. So in order for you to create a separate routine, you have to fast or distance yourself from certain things, which means you have to have a sophisticated method to dismantle it, one mechanism at a time. So this lesson is talking about dealing with people who are causing trouble amongst the righteous people in a very elaborate way that you have to dismantle the relationship that you have to people who are accusing you of some bullshit or causing trouble amongst you, especially if it's people who are in your family, in your community, people in your work that you have to deal with, because it's possible to take everything from them, but sometimes not the language. You may have to speak to them, but you can exile them. And that's what the lesson is telling you about. You exile them, and after a certain period of time, this person is going to go savage. So where do you get savage from? You go back to the second lesson, which talks about why Musa had a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC. Listen to the language. In the year 2000 BC, the first part of that lesson says, because he was a savage. A savage means a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. I built about that in another video, and I was talking about how when you're living a beast life, you're living on a horizontal plane. You're not perpendicular. You're not upright. Okay? So in the lesson, when it talks about how they were exiled from the root of civilization, or they were exiled from your heart and put in a place where you can see them. You took everything from them but their language, meaning you still speak or whatever, you're cordial, you know. But being indifferent like that, you're not allowing them to come amongst you and to do trading or do anything else like that, right? But after a certain period of time, them living in that place or them being separate from you, they devolved. They didn't evolve. They devolved into savagery, which means they lost the knowledge of themselves and started living a beast life. 2,000 years later, Musa was sent. So why would Musa be sent 2,000 years later? Well, when you look at Musa coming 2,000 years later, in the knowledge degree, or one of our lessons in the 140s, where it talks about who made Holy Quran a Bible, how long ago, when you tell us why does Islam renew its history every 25,000 years, one part of that lesson, it says that the circumference of the planet Earth is 24,896 miles, approximately 25,000 miles, and we make our history or our Quran to equal our home circumference a year to every mile. So anyway, when you think about 2,000 years, that is in reference to an age. So I'm sure some of y'all heard stuff like, yo, the age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces, this, that, and the third. That is talking about the great year or a stellar calendar year, which is about 25,000 years approximately. So what people don't realize is when you look at the solar system, the planets is not just revolving around the sun. The sun is moving too. It's big, but it's moving too, but very, very slow. It only moves 1 degree every 72 years. So when you multiply 72 years by 1 degree, each constellation is 30 degrees apart. And that equals 2,160 years. So for the sun to pass from one house or to move from one constellation to the next, for it to move 30 degrees, it takes an entire age. It takes 2,160 years. So when it says Musa came 2,000 years later, it's talking about Musa came an age later. That's what it's saying. So here you had people, or if you're looking at it internally, here you had some adversity you're dealing with, something that you wanted to change in your routine or whatever, and you exiled it. You kept it apart from your own social equality. You took everything from it. After a certain amount of time, it devolved because you weren't feeding it. But now what you need to do is you need to bring civilization. And that is the role that Musa played. He came to bring civilization to the Caucasian or to the devil. Why would you do something like that? Well, again, it shows mercy. It also shows that after that period of time, a person being in that kind of state, true indeed, 2,160 years, a person being in that type of state, in order for you to bring correction, I do the exact same thing with my preschoolers. If my preschooler is doing something that is inappropriate, I don't just sit them aside and be like, you did this, that, and the third, you need to have a timeout. No. I walk them every step of the way. I walk them through every step or everything that they did, and then I sit them there. After a certain amount of time, I come back and I share with them some understanding. I give them some civilization. I teach them how to live a respectful life, how to play together with their friends, and all of these things. The lesson is telling you the exact same thing. Because if you represent the fathers and the mothers of civilization, right? If the root of civilization started with you, and you are the father of all of that, then you have to give correction to your children. You have to give them that type of opportunity. Now, if they don't take advantage of the opportunity, that's on them. But you, being merciful, the most merciful, you have to take that opportunity to bring civilization or to give people an opportunity to clean themselves up. Because if you didn't, and they somehow made a way out of that scenario and proved you wrong, it would show and prove that there's a flaw in your sense of justice. And you never want to put yourself in a position where you could be proven as having a flaw in your sense of justice. Because like in our lessons, it says that we are all wise and righteous, and there is no unrighteousness in us. We're just and true. So being just and true, being all wise, being all righteous, we cannot put ourselves in any kind of position that can be proven wrong. So think about this. When we exiled them into the caves or the hillsides of Europe, rope and bound them in, if we didn't give them no chance sometime after that, or send Musa and one of them found their way down from there and elevated their condition, how would we look? How would we look? So Musa had to come in age later. He had to come in age later. And when he came, he taught them how to live a respectful life, how to build homes for themselves, and some trick knowledge Akuba taught them, which was devilishment, stealing, telling lies, and how to master the original man. So some people got it twisted. They think Musa came there and he was teaching them, yo, I'm going to teach you how to live a respectful life. I'm going to teach you how to build a home for yourself and all of this other stuff. Now I'm going to teach you the good shit. Now I'm going to teach you the trick knowledge. Like, no, that wasn't what it was. In order for, like, I'm going to go back to the scenario with my preschoolers. In order for them to understand what they did, I have to teach them about that. So if they doing something over here, I'm not just going to sit them over there and be like, yo, you in timeout. I'm going to walk them every step of the way, sit them over there, rope and bind them in to that area of the classroom until you get your stuff together. And then later on, I'm going to bring the civilization and teach them how to live respectful in the classroom, how to play with their friends and all this other stuff. But then I'm also going to teach them the trick knowledge. I'm going to teach them this is why that shit doesn't work out. This is why you were over there. And this is why this is the best way to handle these kind of situations and scenarios. So now, when it came to the Caucasians or the devils that was in that state, some were more attracted to the trick than the damn knowledge. And that's oftentimes how some people are. If you're sharing with them the most righteous way to do things, what is the most appropriate way to do things, and you're showing them how you unravel the trick by sharing knowledge with them, they may be more attracted to the fact that you could unravel the trick as opposed to the knowledge that you're sharing with them. So you had some people who elevated their condition and now they are living or walking in a path of civilization. You have others, just like some people that you may see that have been in correctional facilities. They went in maybe for one charge, and then they come out with all of this knowledge of how to do all of these other crimes now. You have some people that come out of that condition like that. But then you have others that come out and they walk a straight path. It's the exact same scenario. The exact same scenario. So now, when you're talking about this lesson in terms of how it applies to you, the first lesson in our 1 to 14s, why isn't the devil settled on the best part of the planet Earth? Because the earth belongs to the original man, and knowing that the devil is weak and wicked and there would not be any peace amongst them, we put him on the worst part and kept the best part preserved for ourselves ever since we made it the best part is in the radio, right? So that first lesson gives you one method of how to deal with that kind of adversity or that kind of devilishment, whether it's something that you want to correct in yourself or if it's something that you see in other people. It's telling you, preserve the best part for yourself. And don't allow that to settle on the best part. Why? Because settle means to resolve. And when you see certain things like that, you don't want to resolve that scenario or that situation in the best part. So, for example, if you're in a relationship, right, and you know that a person is volatile, don't break up with them in your goddamn house. Because they may break up some shit in your house. Preserve the best part for yourself and don't settle the devil in the best part. Don't settle or strive to resolve that relationship in your house. You know what I mean? If you want to break up, do it in a public place because you can always walk away. You can't walk away in your own house. Yeah, you can call the police and shit like that, but again, preserve the best part for yourself. That's what that lesson is teaching you. Now, think about how ignorant it is for somebody to be walking around looking at that lesson like, oh, let me see if what part the devil, when he got exiled and shit. It's like, how does that apply to today? How are you using that today? I gave you a simple explanation of how to use that. Don't settle those type of differences or adversity in your own damn house. Or if you see people out in the street and you want to be a good Samaritan and you see them fighting and it's muddy and shit outside and you just got some new rug put in that same day in your house, don't bring them in your house on your good rug and try to resolve they fight. Some people don't have sense enough to not do that, right? So that first lesson gives you one way to handle adversity. It's emphasizing preserving the best part for yourself, right? The second lesson, which I alluded to about Musa having a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC, that gives you a whole different method. That lesson tells you about having that hard time because this person is a savage and, you know, your heart's all in it. Because civilized means to teach knowledge and wisdom to all the human families of the planet Earth. That lesson is telling you about the hard time that comes along with dealing with that adversity when your heart's all in it, when you're all emotionally involved, right? Now, the third degree, why do we let a half original man like Columbus discover the poor part of the planet Earth? Because the original black man is God. Because the original black, this is the lesson, the original black man is God, an owner of the earth. Not because Master Farad is God. It doesn't say that. It says because the original black man is God and owner of the earth, and knowing every square inch of it, he has chosen for himself the best part. He didn't care about the poor part. He didn't care. He didn't care. So that lesson is giving you a whole different methodology on how to deal with that kind of adversity. Or if you see people who are causing trouble amongst you and stuff, don't care about it. Don't care. But like, you get to the culture degree, the one that we're talking about now. That's a whole different, elaborate way that you need to deal with some people. A whole different way. Now, here's the thing. Some people get these lessons, and they just looking at it on the surface. Like these were just historical events, and it don't mean shit to them today. And that's one reason why they don't use these lessons, because they can't break them down how I'm breaking them down. They can't show you how they are presently active right now. And you ain't got to believe nothing that I'm saying. If you didn't catch some of the things that I'm sharing with you, go back, listen to it, apply it to your life, and see if the shit works or not. And that's the beauty of these lessons. It doesn't depend upon people being a believer and a follower. I ain't telling y'all none of that shit. I'm just sharing things with you, perspectives of what I learned from these lessons, how I apply it to everyday life, and what are the consequences or the results of that. So this culture degree, why do we run Yakub and his maid devil from the root of civilization over the hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it, Europe? What is the meaning of the EU and RLPE? How long ago? What did the devil bring with him? What kind of life did the devil live in? And how long before Musa came to teach the devil the forgotten trick knowledge? Now, here's an interesting thing about this lesson. This is as the 5%. We call this lesson the first mountain of 120. We call it that is because this is a lengthy degree. I quoted it to you a couple times. It's lengthy. It's the first one that you really have to memorize like that. The other ones, it's like, yeah, you can get it. But this one, it really tests your commitment to learning and studying these degrees. There's people that I know right now that started studying 120 in their lessons. They still stuck on this fourth lesson, and they've been stuck there for 10, 15 years. They couldn't get over that first mountain. They couldn't. Now, the irony of it is that this is the first lesson that gives you this very elaborate method of how to deal with a damn devil. And some people are stuck on that lesson, or they don't even know it. So when Wesley Muhammad was talking about monk and all of these other things and some of the things that Honorable Elijah Muhammad said or whatever, he never just went directly to this degree as the foundation and then built on this lesson in relationship to some of the other different things that are outside of that. Even what Elijah was saying, because this was directly his answers to that question in that lesson. That should be the foundation. Talking about monk and everything else, that should be outside of this. So as a 5%, we're not sitting here debating with people about whether there was an oasis between the Caucasus Mountains and the root of civilization. We're striving to find out, okay, what is what is your root of civilization? Where is it? Personally. Where did knowledge and wisdom of you as an original man or original woman start when your planet, or your terrestrial form was first founded? Do you acknowledge the difference between the evil and the devil? The devil do evil. I don't, But yeah, so where is your root of civilization? The devil and ultimate evil. So this lesson is, so now, after this lesson, the next lesson, the power degree. Why did we take Jerusalem from the devil and how long ago? That gives you a different way to deal with the devil. That's where I get my name from, Saladin. If people study that lesson, taking Jerusalem from the devil, you're going to go into learning about the Crusades and the method that I used in order to deal with the devil. But then you get to the equality degree, the 6th degree. Why does the devil teach and keep our people illiterate? That gives you a different method or a different perspective of the devil. Then you get to the God degree, or the 7th degree. Why does the devil call our people Africans? Then you get to the Bill degree. Why does the devil try to keep our people apart from their own social equality? Then you get to the Born degree. Why does Muhammad make the devil study from 35 to 50 years before he call himself a Muslim son and wear the greatest and only known flag of the universe? But he must add a sword to the upper part of the holy and universal flag of Islam. So you keep going through these lessons. There are different gradations or different methods to teach you how to deal with devil, how to deal with your own internal adversity. But if you just sitting here, a surface dweller, looking at these lessons like it was just some event that happened in the past, you're going to come across and sound just like Wesley Muhammad sounded. Where you sitting there scratching your head like, okay, what the fuck does an oasis in the middle of the desert got to do with me right now? How can I share this with children in my community? What significance is it to them? What significance is it to me? Because that is where the understanding is. So when you look at these lessons, you have to be able to gain understanding from these lessons. Not just, first of all, most of these folks don't even know them to begin with. So I wouldn't expect them to understand what it is that I'm sharing with you. The only way that I'm able to understand it is because it's right here. I walk with these lessons. I could be walking down the street and see certain things take place, and I'm like, oh man. Because they started causing trouble amongst the righteous people, accusing the righteous people, telling lies, causing them to fight and kill one another. Yakub was the original black man and father of the devil. He taught the devil how to do this devilishment. The root of civilization is Arabia at the holy city of Mecca, which means where knowledge and wisdom of the original man started when the planet was first founded. You see how these lessons just come off like that? And some people sit there and strive to minimize it. Oh, you just knowing the lessons don't mean nothing. Well, that's why you can't extract shit. That's why you don't understand nothing. And you sitting here talking about shit as if it's just a historical event, and it sounds like a relic. It sounds like some shit you talking about in the past that has no significance to today. The same way that I'm talking about this right now, I can break it down for 5-year-olds to understand. Because I understand this. I understand it. And that's one of the big differences with people who, you got people that, oh, I know what the 5% is, and the 5% deal with this, that, and the third. Okay, let's go through these lessons then. Tell me what you know, and then share with me your understanding of these lessons and how I could apply it to my everyday life. Right? So now, going back to that coach degree when I was talking about Musa came in age later, and brought civilization. He taught how to live a respectful life, how to build homes for themselves, and some trick knowledge Yakuba taught them, which was devilishment, stealing, telling lies, and how to master the original man. That needed to be taught because they needed to know what got you into that bullshit to begin with. Anytime you're dealing with a person that is uncivil, they causing trouble, they doing this, that, and the third, you walk them every step of the way. If you're putting it in the context of working at an institution or on your job, you need to document shit. You need to document it every step of the way. So that later on, when you want to bring some civilization to this scenario, or you want to show and prove your perspective and what was actually going on, you have a paper trail. So it's talking about being exiled 2,200 miles, walking every step of the way. That's essentially a paper trail. That's essentially what it is. Because later on down the line, you need to deal with that. And in dealing with it, you need to have all your bases covered. That's why you keep the language. That's why you take everything else except the language. Because you're going to need a medium to be able to communicate principles and values. How else can you teach a person how to live a respectful life and how to build homes for themselves if you can't communicate those principles or those values? That's why the language remained. But again, you took everything from them, and that's just like how it should be with anybody that's causing trouble amongst you, especially if it's people that you have to deal with. Take everything from them. Don't fuck with them like that. Take everything from them but the language. Speak. How you doing? Be cordial, but keep that shit pushing. Because if they're causing some type of trouble, you need to exile them motherfuckers from your root of civilization. EU means hillsides. ROPE means rope to bind in. You bind them motherfuckers in, but you put them on a hillside. A hill is a man-made elevation of land. You put them in a place where you can see them at all times, but keep them apart from your social equality though. Then after a certain period of time, you bring the civilization. Because here's the thing. If you don't bring the civilization, or if you don't offer that alternative or that option, if one of them, makes it out of that state or that condition, it shows that your standard of justice was flawed. Consider you sitting on a bench as a judge, and the people that's coming before you. You make one bad decision and accuse somebody of doing something that they didn't do, you can get removed off of the bench for that shit. Where is that shown and proven in our lessons? Our born degree says, why does Muhammad make the devil study from 35 to 50 years before he call himself a Muslim son and wear the greatest only known flag of the universe, but he must add a sword to the upper part of the holy and universal flag of Islam? That lesson is dealing with the science of Freemasonry being given to Caucasians so that they can be perpendicular, be upright, and strive to learn to do like the original man. Right? Now, why is that given as an option? Because it's a flawed position or posture to tell anybody what they is or ain't gonna do. Because you don't know that person's heart. And you can easily be proven wrong when you say that shit about somebody. That's why you never strive to sit there and say what a person is and ain't gonna do. You just watch them, and they're gonna do what they gonna do. If it's something that is going to encroach upon your freedom or that's going to undermine your integrity or something like that, you just move out of the way when the anvils start dropping out of the goddamn sky. That's what you do. But you don't sit there and tell a person what they is and ain't going to do. Because as soon as you say that, oftentimes people are motivated by that just to prove you wrong. And that's the whole narrative in the story from a biblical perspective about God and devil. If you just look at it, the whole narrative is based upon the devil trying to get God tripped up or put in a position where it shows and proves that his word ain't bond and his bond ain't life, and that he's not as just as he says that he is. So why does a position of the devil exist? Well, one of our lessons asked, why did God make devil? And the answer is to show forth and prove our power that we are all wise and righteous, and we can make a devil which is weak and wicked, give him the power to rule the earth for 6,000 years, then destroy the devil in one day without falling victim to the devil's civilization. Otherwise, show and prove that Allah's God always has been and always will be. So you need an adversary. You need something that represents the antithesis of what it is that you say that you are. Darkness is darkness only because there is light. So you think about that law of correspondence, it's the exact same thing. You can't say that you are who you are if you have not gone through anything. You know what I'm saying? That sounds like squashing, like what is called a dictatorship in human terms. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Michelle. But yeah, so going back to what I was saying about that born degree, that lesson or that opportunity was given for people to clean themselves up. Not because you got faith or you believe that people is going to do this, that, and the third. Nah, you can never say that there was not an option or an opportunity for you to get some shit done. Because if you close that door on anybody and they squeeze through that crack, you look like an ass. Because it shows that your assessment was wrong. And if you're considered all wise and righteous and you just and true and there's no unrighteousness in you and all of this other stuff, you not who you say you are. Because you just made a flawed assessment and you're supposed to be the standard of justice. You can't even put yourself in that position. So you never put yourself in a position to be like a person is going to do this, that, and the third. You just watch them. And whatever they did, that's what they did. There was an opportunity. If you didn't take advantage of the opportunity, that's on you. You can never say that I denied you or anything. So that born degree is there for that specific purpose. And if you look at it, it says 35 to 50 years. That's a generation. That's saying this protracted period of time, you have to be dedicated to striving to learn and do like the original man. You have to dedicate your life to this for me to even do trading amongst you. It ain't got shit to do with love. And for those of you who have that lesson, I'm going in and out of that degree, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with love or no relationship. We can just trade amongst each other because you've shown me that you've dedicated yourself and you've committed yourself to striving to do like the original man. But I'm always going to have this sword above your head so that you could keep in mind that anytime you reveal this secret that we gave you this chance to clean yourself up, your head will be taken off by the sword. Not necessarily from me, but your own damn people would do the shit. So I'm reminding you of that. You have your own people who have not committed themselves to striving to learn to do like the original man or to be righteous. And if they know that I'm teaching you, shit, they're going to do what they have historically done to people like you. That is one reason why the sword is above the flag when it comes to the Shriners. So that they can keep in mind, like, yo, if you strive to be righteous and everything, you want to be an ally, you know, your own people will do you dirty if they know that you're striving to do certain things. So I'm showing you how you need to navigate in this landscape. That's what it is. It's not that I'm carrying around a sword. I mean, yeah, I got a sword too. But, you know, the main thing is, if you're committed to being an ally for social justice and you striving to be righteous, you need to look out for your own people, because you have a lot of them that are devils that I would not do no trading with. You know what I'm saying? So that born degree proceeds the knowledge cipher degree, or it's right before the 10th degree, which says, why does Muhammad or any Muslim murder the devil? What does it do if each Muslim in regard to 4 devils? What reward does a Muslim receive upon having presenting 4 devils at one time? So the first part of it says, because he's 100% weak and wicked and will not keep and obey the laws of Islam. His ways and actions like those of a snake of the grafted type. So Muhammad learned he could not reform the devil, so they had to be murdered because he knew there was a snake. Also, if allowed to live, they'd just think somebody else. So 100% weak and wicked. That's what the lesson tells you. It doesn't say 99.9%. It don't say 95%. It don't say none of that shit. It says because they are 100% weak and wicked and will not keep and obey the laws. So after giving a person a chance to clean themselves up and them not taking advantage of that opportunity to clean themselves up, you better be 100% sure before you cut them motherfuckers off. Because if you're not 100% sure, you gave them a chance to clean themselves up, and you being a little bit too ambitious, or you stepping out there like, oh no, they ain't gonna do this, that, and the third, and you declaring them 100% weak or wicked, and they ain't gonna keep and obey and all this other stuff, and it turns out that 1%, you know, they were 99% on some bullshit, but that 1% got them through, you look like an ass now. You look like an ass. So you never want to put yourself in a position where you can be looking like an ass. And that's unfortunately what people do when you see people that's all leftist, or they all conservative, or they extreme alt-right or whatever. They have these polarizing views that consistently puts a person in a position to be looking like an ass. And you never want to put yourself in a position like that because it's too flawed. It's no different than a person that's saying shit like, all women is this, all men is that. You don't know all men and all women. All it takes is one woman or one man to prove your whole premise wrong. Now your whole shit is crumbled. So you never even want to speak like that because it puts you in a position where you can be proven wrong. It's flawed. So the lessons are set up that way so that people don't take flawed positions. But if you don't study these lessons or even know what it's teaching you, then you can end up putting yourself in these kind of positions where you could be shown and proven to be wrong. So within the 5%, there is room for error. Within life, there is room for error. But the difference is, Some people are walking around with fucking Sharpies. They walking around with Sharpies in life. 5%ers, we got pencils. We got the lead on one end and we got the eraser on the other end, and we ain't afraid to use that eraser. Other people who practice these religions and shit, they got Sharpies. And that's why the shit looks so fucked up, because when they making these mistakes, there's no way to erase it. They just scribble over and you looking at it like, yo, that shit is wrong as fuck. But you still gonna go along with it? When they believe something, they're not subject to correction. They're not subject to correction. So it's an 85% room for error, or 5% room. Live life to stand to be corrected. That's probably a better way to summarize maybe the questions that you're asking, Michelle. Live life standing to be corrected. So as scientists of life, you strive to learn, you strive to study, you strive to do research. When you build with somebody, they offer other perspectives of that research. And if there's something that you need to adjust, use the eraser on your pencil. Some people scared to do that shit. I like using my eraser because it's showing me that I've grown and it's a way to quantify your growth and development. It's difficult for people to quantify growth and development when they don't use both sides of their goddamn pencil, or if they just walking around with a Sharpie all the damn time. But that's what believers do, because nothing you present to them, they're gonna integrate that into their life and grow and develop from it. They treat that as a threat to their foundation. We don't do that. So if we found some research tomorrow that said W.D. Farrar came from Antarctica, it's like, oh, yo, that's peace. Let me do some more research on Antarctica then. That's what we do. Other people are beyond some shit like, well, Antarctica is the ancient traditional name of Arabia, because the Arabia comes from the Antarctica. And when the Antarctica was once in the planet, the Pangea, when it split apart, Antarctica was really where Arabia was. And then where Arabia was, that's why W.D. Farrar is came from. They do bullshit like that. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's what any believers do. But when you're scientists of life and you're researching things, you take the shit back to the lab and you adjust it. You use both sides of the pencil. You say, oh man, let me, rework these equations. That's how you grow and develop. But some people are not committed to that. And that's a lot of responsibility though. You know, it's a lot of responsibility to put yourself out there and be like, yo, this is all that I know right now. I'm going to share with you what I know at this point in my growth and development. Please add on. And that's what we do as 5%ers. We build and we add on to each other. Don't you have to have 90% of the facts? How can you quantify the facts, especially undiscovered facts? Michelle, you asking some weird ass questions right now. Don't you have to have 90% of the facts? You have whatever facts that you've acquired. You don't know if it's 90 shit in your mind. It may be 90%. Sometimes when I'm building my enlightener, life justice, in my mind I might think I got 90%. I start building with him, and that 90%, that shit starts shrinking like 85, 80, 75, 70, 65, 60, 55, 50, 30. And you know what I'm saying? Because of his life experience. But ultimately, Regardless if you think you got 90, regardless of whatever percent that you do your best and you strive to research whatever it is that you can research. And when you build with people or you communicate with people, you're open and receptive to their perspective and their research. It may be bullshit, but you don't know. But you're still open and receptive to it. Now, see, most people who have a religion or a belief system, they don't take this path because it's too much responsibility. True indeed. So that's what knowledge cipher is, right? We add knowledge on to the cipher. So a cipher, so why you call yourself 5%? You tell me why you think I call myself 5%. And then based upon where I recognize you are at, I'll make some adjustments for you. How's that sound? Because I don't even know where you're coming from. And that's one of the most effective ways to meet people where they are, you know? True indeed, honey. True indeed. True indeed. But yeah, so our lessons walk and talk. They're not relics. They're not stuff that we sitting back. Like, for example, when we talk about the devil was manufactured on the island of Pelan or Patmos, which is an island that's situated on the Aegean Sea, right? We're not on no fact-finding mission looking for some big-ass skulls, a big skull on the island of Patmos and bones and shit like that. I mean, some people may want to do that type of archaeological work, whatever. But that's not what we're doing. We're striving to look at what is the significance of that. How do we apply that and relate it to our everyday life? This is not just looking at what we consider events to be in the past. What's the understanding of that? Then basically you are calling yourself that can't be quantified. That doesn't take away from the truth, though. Hey, I don't know what you think, Michelle. It sounds like you're having a conversation in your own head right now. But what you can do, like I just shared, is you tell me what you think 5%er means. And then based upon your response, I will make some adjustments with the sense of knowing where you're coming from and where you are. So I'm not just going to tell you something that is based upon my understanding in terms of that, of where I am, because I have no idea where you're at. So, for example, if you start talking to me about if you got a Christian background or whatever, and you start talking so I can understand. Yeah, I know, but what I'm asking you is, you tell me what you think I mean by 5%. You tell me what you think that means. And then based upon what you tell me your understanding is, I will share some knowledge and wisdom to meet you where your understanding is. Does that make sense to you? If I was a lawyer, that's where AI would lead you. I don't know. You sound like you talking cryptic. To the water where I'm at. Okay. Well, anyway, let me go back to what I'm saying, because you sound like you playing games right now. Yeah, so so when I listened to that 2-hour thing that Wesley was doing, there was no understanding there. You know, granted, he was talking about the what Paul Guthrie was saying, and that and the third, but as 5%ers, we ain't sitting back arguing about no bullshit like that. We ain't looking for no no oasis and all of this other stuff. And if you think you found an oasis between Mecca and the lower Caucasus, cool. Now what? Now what? What does that mean to a 9-year-old? Show somebody how to use that. Because if it's not born in any understanding, what is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of even sharing that? And that is the reason, why we even have those lessons, to share some understanding, right? So let me tie this back into today's mathematics, being the 13th. That culture degree, or that fourth degree, why do we run Yakub and is made devil from the root of civilization over hot Arabian desert and into the caves of West Asia and now call it Europe? What does it mean in the EU and RPE? How long ago? What did the devil bring with them? What kind of life did the devil live in? And how long before Musa came to teach the devil the forgotten trick knowledge? That culture degree, or that fourth lesson, if you break down 4, it comes down to 1 and 3, knowledge and understanding, like what I was talking about earlier. 13th letter in the alphabet is M. That's master. So when you think about a master's relationship to knowledge and understanding and culture, when you think about culture, or that being a person's way of life, or the sum total of all their people activities, you can recognize a master, which is a male or female, simply by how they live and the things that they do. So when you think about knowledge and understanding, the bridge between knowledge and understanding is wisdom. Wisdom is the bridge between knowledge and understanding. Or 2 is the bridge between 1 and 3. When you look at a person's way, how they do things, that is how you can ascertain what they know and what they understand. If they doing some old other shit, now you know and understand what the degree of wisdom is. And it's also giving you a sense of how they live, what their culture is, what their way of life is. Do you see the relationship in all of that? Now, when you relate what I just said to that culture degree about running Yakub and is made devil from the root of civilization, once you're assessing people, their way of doing things, and you ascertain their knowledge and understanding, you can see their culture, you have to make a decision. If this is a person that, based upon their way, is going to be problematic or troubling for you as a righteous person, and if they are, you need to take deliberate actions in terms of exiling them from the root of your civilization. And that's what that lesson is laying out for you. Every step of the way. It's showing you how to deal with a person that is causing trouble in that kind of way. Don't entertain it. But if you're not going to entertain it, you got to keep in mind that sometimes you may have people in your family, people that you work with, people that you might go to school with, people you're going to have to interact with. That's on some bullshit. How do you deal with that? Well, you got to talk to these motherfuckers. You take everything from them, but your language. Speak, talk, be cordial. How you doing? Keep it pushing, but don't fuck with them. Don't fuck with them. But you don't be mean about it. And that's why Musa was sent 2,000 years later. Civilization was given to them later on. Or an opportunity to do better. An option was given to them. Because here's the thing. If you were ever in a situation like that. Because here's the thing. Sometimes people may think that you're causing trouble amongst the righteous people. Just because you view things differently, people could be looking at you as causing trouble. Do you know when Martin Luther King was here, there was a lot of black people like, yo, what you following him for? We got it good. There's a lot of black people that thought, well, I'm not even going to use that language, a lot of people. There were some black people that thought Martin Luther King was a damn troublemaker. know what I'm saying? Some people thought that. So it's times where you can be on the receiving end of that degree, where some people could be looking at you like you are causing trouble amongst the righteous people. And if you're on the receiving end of that degree and you see somebody doing that shit to you, taking everything from you but the language, and you walk by and they give you one of these shits, and they doing all of that kind of bullshit, you need to know. You need to know how you should respond in that scenario. Because they may be making you walk every step of the way and exiling you and putting you where they can see you. Where they can keep an eye on you. That's what that essentially means. EU means hillsides. That's saying I want to keep an eye on you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be mindful of all of that. That's one way that this lesson applies to everyday life. It's not something that we sitting back trying to measure. Was it this many steps to get to the oasis before you get to the... Nah, we ain't doing all of that bullshit. Of course we sit and research this from a historical perspective. And we look at things as, did these events actually take place? Yeah, we look at it from that perspective. We look at it chronologically. But that ain't the only way we look at it. And as you saw in that video, and anytime you usually hear some folks talk about these lessons that are Muslims, they ain't sharing no understanding. It's some GoBot shit. It's some very basic, bland, not substantive at all, just no understanding. You just gonna tell me about some steps in some oasis? Tell me about what 2,200 miles, the significance of that. You know, walking every step of the way. What does the meaning of that? And taking everything from them. So one of the things that you also learn in that lesson is everything being taken from them is also about the symbolism that people deal with when they enter into some of these fraternal or sorority organizations, about walking across the burning sands. And sometimes people who are part of these different yo G, okay, I won't call them GoBots no more. I just call them a McDonald's toy or some shit like that, you know. But one of the things in like the Masonic Lodge, as well as these fraternal organizations or appendant bodies, you know, you learn about people crossing the sands. You learn about them walking across the burning sands and stuff like that, or where they say riding, they rode across, whatever. But the apron that they wear is considered a symbol of innocence, but it's also used to cover their shame. You know what I'm saying? And being roped and bound in is symbolic to the cable toe in Masonic circles, right? Now, Musa came in a different age, or 2,000 years later, taught them how to live a respectful life. That's what they say in the Masonic Lodge. They say this is done to make good men better. That's the customer service shit that they tell you about the Masonic Lodge. It's to make good men better. Yes. Right? So that's the live a respectful life shit that Moose is talking about. How to build a homes for themselves. And that's what masonry is. It's about the building trades. So the home that they're building for themselves is not just necessarily an object or a shelter that they can use to weather them through the storms, but it's also this body or this shelter to weather them through these psychological storms that they ass is going to go through. Because you got to think about just the head trip that a person goes through from losing the knowledge of themselves, being brought back into civilization, learning how to live a respectful life, build homes for themselves, but then also learning about the trick knowledge learning about the things that landed them into that position to begin with, a lot of times that can create post-traumatic stress for some people because they have to confront that bullshit again. And that's very difficult for some people to deal with. And that is also one of the reasons why people coming into knowledge of self or striving to be civilized or to be righteous, a lot of times people really don't want to confront their own bullshit. And when you think about religion, right, whether it's a person being a Muslim, whether that's a person being a Christian, a lot of times in those particular houses of worship, there may not be a specific system or methodology that is designed for a self-diagnostic or a self-assessment. You know, a person can be a member of the church or masjid, you know, for years and never really delve into themselves in terms of growth and development. They may just be there for the gospel music. You know, whoever knows. But as a 5%er living this culture, which is not a religion, there is no way for you to not look in the mirror. There's no way. Because you are responsible for your own happiness. You are responsible for how you respond to every life situation. There's no boogeyman. There's nobody you can blame. You know, as bad as things are in this society, right? And the kind of bullshit that we see that's going on, we never put ourselves in a position of powerlessness. And that's one reason why we call ourselves a 5%, because 5 in our mathematics represents power. So we always strive to put ourselves in a position of power, which means we have the power to respond. Even if it's some bullshit going on, how are you going to respond? How are you going to respond? So there's never a point where, oh my God, I just can't do nothing about it. Shit, you saying something, you can do something. You know what I mean? But when a person is in a religion, they got all of these people to blame. You know, if you're in a certain Christian branch, you got a whole bunch of demons you can call by name and blame and shit. And you got a whole bunch of saints that you can call by name and give them credit for whatever bullshit you're going through. But as a 5%, you're responsible for what you do and how you choose to respond. And sometimes you may not respond the best way. You know what I'm saying? It might not be your day. And you got to be honest about that. Shit, today wasn't my day. I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to do better tomorrow. Because I'm responsible for my own happiness. Sometimes when people are following different paths and they're religious, they don't take responsibility like that. If something's going bad, Satan stand behind me. Or, no, not today, Satan, not today, devil, and all this other shit. Like, no, you put yourself right there. That's your bullshit. You know? But with us, we don't do all of that. And I understand it's difficult for some people to take responsibility. With my preschoolers, when you're working in early childhood development, right? Now, let me give you some science on this. One of our degrees, our 22nd degree, where it talks about Yakub playing with 2 pieces of steel at the age of 6. When a child is 6 years old and younger, their brain is 95% developed. That is the formative years, because you're actually forming the brain architecture of the child during that period in their life. So you are literally creating the brain circuitry of a child between the ages of 6. So when it's talking about Yakub had this determined idea, it's talking about how his brain architecture was being developed to the point where his determined idea was already made manifest, was already actualized, because his brain was 95% developed already. You couple that with the type of home environment he grew up in. You couple that with the kind of social conditions or construct that was going on. And you can see how the manufacturing of the devil could be made manifest from any person that's born in that kind of scenario, that's in that kind of situation. That is one of the lessons of Yakub being the father of the devil. Any of y'all could be Yakub. And that's not just simply talking about males. I don't care if you're named Betty or Michael or whatever. You can still be Yakub. You can still be father of the devil, teaching others how to do devilishment. Doesn't matter what your name is. The reputation and what that name represents in that form can be a father or a mother of a damn devil. So it's not just about looking back at a lesson and trying to find the evidence of one individual person that made a devil. You need to be looking around in your own household and in your own community of potential Yakubs after looking in the mirror. That is how that lesson actually functions. Because if you're not looking at it and using it in that practical sense, what the fuck do you have it for? It has no substance. It has no meaning. And that's one of the reasons why you have people who look at these lessons and they think that it's a relic and it has no significance because they ain't got no understanding. They have no understanding. Right? So going back to what I was saying about early childhood development, there's children in my preschool class that I have to redirect now from playing the blame somebody else game. They do something and the first thing, let me give you a scenario. One of them may snatch a toy from one of the other children or put their hands on another child or whatever, and I'm like, so-and-so, why you do this and the third? Soon as I say that, so-and-so did this, that, and the third, they don't even give it a thought that they're responsible. They're learning this already at that age of not taking responsibility for their own actions. And I'm teaching 4 and 5-year-olds right now how to redirect them from playing that bullshit blame somebody else game. And that's where it starts because you're in the formative years and they see adults around them playing that game, not taking responsibility. And that's what they're learning to do. So I check that shit. No, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to nobody else. You know what I'm saying? Or sometimes with them, or even like the after school students that I work with, the 9 to 12-year-olds, it may be something on the floor and I'm like, could you pick that up for me? So-and-so did this, that, and the third. They bringing up somebody else's name, or I didn't do this. I didn't say nobody else's name. I asked you to pick that up. I ain't talking to nobody else. I'm talking to you. You be responsible for that. When I'm picking stuff up, I ain't do it, but I'm taking responsibility. So these are things that are important. You know what I mean? A lot of times when people get involved in religion and stuff, they have these they have this built into the system of religion where you can always blame somebody else for whatever's going on, as opposed to you being responsible for what you do and how you choose to respond. Now, that doesn't mean that you let people off the hook and you be on some turn the other cheek shit and you just gonna pray it off and everything gonna work out and all. No, I ain't saying that. I'm saying you do whatever you can to resolve the situation. You do whatever you can to respond appropriate to a situation. Not act powerless like there ain't shit that you could do about it, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of the society is in the mess that it's in right now. Because you got people who play the blame somebody else game. They always shifting responsibility to somebody else. And they practice religions that reinforce that bullshit. If something's going wrong, it's some invisible entity called the devil or some person that's on a hot sauce bottle called the devil that's causing it, or that's living under the ground somewhere. Or if it's something that's good or whatever, I'm going to give thanks to this invisible entity that's sitting on the clouds. That's just unfathomable. That's unknowable, that I just know is there. And I'm just going to think that thing. Like, come on, man. Nothing that you see around you bears witness to that kind of bullshit. Nothing. That tree that's growing in your backyard or your front yard or whatever, that is not subject to the bullshit that you're talking about. If it does not grow, there is some practical reason why that tree or plant didn't grow. There's nothing mysterious about it. There's something responsible for that tree or that plant's lack of growth. Everything around you is subject to those same kind of rules and regulations or laws. But here you go. We got all these other explanations for the bullshit that we either do or that we accept. And I understand it's difficult for some people to put themselves in a position to check themselves like that and to stop lying to themselves, and then to socialize with a group of other people who are also looking out for their best interest, that's willing to check them, that are willing to not let them lie to themselves. That shit is hard. So to go back to your question about who is the 5%, Michelle, I'm talking about a small minority or percentage of people who live like that, who live striving to be responsible for what they do and how they choose to respond, who are striving to be as honest as possible about the areas in their life that they need to grow and develop in, and that they're open to others who have that same shared perspective, who are looking out for their growth and development as well, who are willing to show them things that they can improve in their life, and are also not going to co-sign any bullshit. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't do that. You have whole religions that do not support people doing that. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of these religions. Not the people in the religion. The system itself is set up a lot of times for failure. Not to say that there's not some good principles and some good values that you can learn in some of these houses of worship. I'm talking about the structure, the hierarchy. The system itself sets people up for failure because it gives people too many tricks to play on themselves and to blame somebody else for whatever's going on in their life. And me personally, I'm most comfortable living a type of way of life where I can go wherever I want to go. I can do whatever I want to do, and I have to be honest about the consequences about where I choose to go and whatever it is that I choose to do. I don't need somebody over me telling me what I need to do and what I don't need to do. I don't need that. I don't need to go to some place every week for somebody to tell me what I can put the same time and energy into researching for myself. I don't need that. And it's not to say that it's not good to fellowship and to connect with people, but connect and fellowship with people who look at you as an equal, who value you in the same degree that you value them, that are that invested in your growth and development as you are in theirs, and that they're open and receptive to your perspectives. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you have people, when it comes to a hierarchy, you can't tell them shit that's at the top. And the problem with that is, if you're at the bottom or anywhere beneath them, your thinking cannot operate outside of the parameters of them at the top. And if you're questioning anything about whatever this person is thinking, or whatever they're saying, you're going to be attacked. You're going to be attacked. And everybody that's at the top of any kind of hierarchy, I don't even care if it's a Fortune 500 company, they don't have all the answers individually. They may be the best knower for a certain scenario or situation, but they're not going to be the best knower for every scenario and situation, because the way life is itself is you have various different scenarios and situations. In some scenarios and situations, an apprentice is the one that's best prepared and qualified. A child may be best prepared and qualified. But if you're the leader or the person at the top, a lot of times you're not open and receptive to listening to any damn body, because people are expecting you to have all of the damn answers. I would never want no position and to be responsible for the minds of everybody like that. You know what I mean? But you have people that go along with that. You have people who live that kind of path, you know what I'm saying? And I'm against that. And that's why I always be talking about it. Because I do not like seeing people being misused, abused, and easily led in the wrong direction. You know? I don't like that. And whenever I get an opportunity, I point it out. Because willfully, especially as adults, we will have enough sense to make sure that our younger generation will be critical thinkers and follow to the extent of learning to lead themselves. Now, I've seen some Muslims that were saying that when I say follow to the extent of learning to lead yourself, that's because some of us got problems with black leadership. You just don't want to follow black leadership. That's why you say follow to the extent of learning to lead yourself. I don't give a fuck who the leadership is. Follow to the extent of learning to lead yourself. It's just that simple. It ain't a problem with black leadership. It's just a problem with any kind of so-called leadership that is not preparing others to lead. Now that goes all the way back to today's mathematics being knowledge and understanding, right? And like I said, the 13th letter in the alphabet is M, which means master. So one of the telltale signs of a master is a person who is preparing the way for the grandmaster. That's how you can recognize who a master is. They are preparing the path for the grandmaster to come behind them. You said Wesley Muhammad reminds you of Yaqub. He reminds me of somebody that's just not well studied. You know what I'm saying? He may have a doctorate degree in religious studies or whatever that he's versed in, but when it comes to the core teachings of what he says that he's about, like knowing these lessons and how to apply them to life, nah, he ain't swift with it like that. You know, and I could see why he really didn't last amongst the 5%. Because all of this stuff that he's doing now as a Muslim in the Nation of Islam, if that's how he was coming off in ciphers, building amongst the gods, they probably bombed his ass every time they got a second. Because he just ain't got it like that. You know what I mean? And I'm just telling you what it is. He may be good for the Muslims, and that is where he may feel at home at. But amongst the gods, if he came amongst the gods talking like that, they'd be bombing the shit out of him. And that's probably what they did when he was down in Atlanta, because he clearly didn't last within the cipher. Now, I've heard him say on occasions that he liked the nation in terms of the structure and all of this other stuff. That may be true. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you wouldn't last amongst the gods if you can't build. Period. And if you don't know your lessons and stuff like that, and you claiming that you got knowledge of self and all this other stuff, oh, you get bombed. And when I say bombed, I'm talking about you would get a talking to. You know what I'm saying? You would have to have some answers for them questions that people is asking you. You know what I mean? So like I said, amongst us, you wouldn't see us in no cipher having no big, long, drawn-out conversation about no general monk and, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. We building on our actual lessons. We going through our mathematics, and we building about our alphabet. That is our foundation, not no plus degrees. You know? So I thought it was kind of strange that he would go into talking all about that instead of just, build on that lesson. You know what I'm saying? At least read it out of your Supreme Wisdom book. You know what I'm saying? We already know that you don't know him up here. I mean, I know that. I'm sure other people do as well. But the fact that he couldn't add on about that lesson really shows you that he has some shortcomings when it comes to really understanding those teachings like that. You know? And like I said previously, if I'm wrong, get on here live with me and prove me wrong. You know what I'm saying? True indeed. It's a plus degree. That ain't nothing that we going in and out using to show and prove this, that, and the third. Like, come on now. You know? But so I just wanted to take a moment and just build on that lesson and just and like I said, you go back and check out his video that he put up, and I challenge you to stay awake while you're watching that shit too. Because in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, that would be torture if you had a child sitting there listening to that long-winded bullshit. Peace, Malik. That would be torture. And that is, like I said, one of the reasons why, a lot of brothers and sisters that call themselves Muslims don't actually learn or hold sacred the lessons or the Supreme Wisdom book, because they can't unlock it. They don't know how to build on it. They don't know how to break those lessons down and show you a practical application of those lessons in everyday life. They just can't do it. You know what I'm saying? They can surface dwell. You know what I'm saying? Like you ask them about the build degree, the 8th lesson in the 1 to 40s. What makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? The earth is approximately covered underwater, approximately 3/4 of its surface. The sun and moon has an attractive power on the planet. While it's traveling at a terrific speed of 1,037 1/3 miles per hour on its way around the sun draws its water up into the earth's rotation, which is called gravitation, and fine mist with the naked eye can hardly detect. As its mist ascends higher and increases with other forms of mist in the different current of your atmosphere, it becomes heavier than gravitation, then distills back to the planet in the forms drops of water, drops of ice, depending on how heavy the mist was, which current the area was in. There's some layers of currents were cold and warm, others very swift and changeable. When this mist strikes a cold current, it becomes solid ice in small round drops and forms, or in the light fluffy form, which is called snow. Its water is never drawn above 6 miles from the Earth's surface by the sun and the moon. The reason that it rains back onto the planet because its water cannot get out of the Earth's atmosphere with its high speed of rotating makes it impossible. Earthquakes are caused by the Son of Man experimenting with high explosives. In fact, all the above is caused by the Son of Man. Now that lesson right there that I just recited, what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? If you ask the average Muslim, politics have caused the lessons to be suppressed. Yep. And the lack of aptitude too. That's why they're suppressed too, because some people just don't know how to unlock them. So the average Muslim, if you ask them about that lesson, what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, they will just open up a book. I'm gonna tell you what they would typically do. What makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? The earth is approximately covered underwater, approximately 3/4 of its surface. The sun and moon has an attractive power on the planet while traveling at a terrific speed of 1,037 third miles per hour its way around the sun. Sun draws water up. They just read it and then tell you, see, brother, that's how rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes is created. Because Master Farad Muhammad, he controls the weather. Because, earthquakes is caused by the Son of Man experimenting with high explosives. Because the high explosives, they make mountains. Because the rain, hail, snow, and the earthquakes, that's because of the weather. Because, brother, when Master Farad Muhammad returns, he's going to use rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes and cause, make a new world, brother. And that's the kind of bullshit that you're going to get. You're going to get that kind of bullshit. That's what you're going to get. You're not going to have somebody explain to you about how, when they're talking about the sun and the moon having an attractive power, they're talking about the cerebellum and the cerebrum of aspects of the brain that controls two different aspects of the physical body. They're not going to explain to you about how this water being drawn above 6 miles from the Earth's surface is really telling you about the atmosphere and gravitation, about how when things are drawn above 6 miles from the Earth's surface that it distills back to the planet in the form. But prior to that form, it's in a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect. So that fine mist is symbolic to mind. Anybody, in terms of the way they think, we operate on a stream of consciousness. In that stream of consciousness, you're always entertaining various different thoughts. These are fine mists that the naked eye can hardly detect. As they ascend higher and increase with other forms of mist in a different current of the atmosphere, it then distills back to the planet in the form. That's the exact same way that thoughts manifest in the physical form. You could be walking through an environment and start thinking some whacked out shit like that thought didn't come from you. That's also something that's called elementals when you're studying other different type of occult sciences, or what is considered thought forms, where you can energize thoughts and send thoughts out into the atmosphere that eventually are made manifest. Like, that lesson is not just talking about the atmosphere of the planet Earth, but it's also talking about the atmosphere of the physical body. Because the same way that the planet is 3/4 covered by water, the physical form is 3/4 covered by water. We're terrestrial just like the planet Earth. In the same way that this planet Earth has an atmosphere, we have an emotional atmosphere. And as that mist ascends higher and increases with other forms of mist in different current of the atmosphere, it then becomes heavier than gravitation and distills back to the form. So when you're caught up in your emotions or in a certain type of atmosphere, you're eventually going to be able to manifest that in some form of action. Because that's where the fine mist is. That's where your mind is. You learn all of that shit from that lesson. But like I said, when some of these folks get these lessons, because the weather, what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, brother, is the Master Farad Muhammad, and he's going to use rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, and he's going to bring a whole new world, brother, with the baby planes and the mothership, and what? What are you talking about? Are y'all studying this? You know what I'm saying? But that's how we deal with these lessons. We break them down and we look at the correspondences. How is this significant? True indeed. Who is that mystery God? There is no mystery God. The Son of Man has searched for this mystery God for trillions of years and have been unable to find this so-called God. So we have agreed that the only God that exists is the Son of the Man. So we lost no more time searching for that does not exist. So we lost trillions of years. We lost trillions of years. And some people will be like, well, I'm going to calculate trillions of years. Trillions of years. No. Trillions of years just simply means you've been looking forever. You've been trying to find that mystery God forever. And after looking forever to find that mystery God, you've agreed that the only God that exists is the Son of Man. So we lost no more time searching for that does not exist. That goes for mystery earth too. You don't lose no time searching for something that don't exist. So like Maya Angelou once said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Or in our language, we would say accept it for what it is, right? So don't be looking for something that just don't exist. You know what I'm saying? It's like a mechanic. If a mechanic is not able to drive a car off a lot, then you shouldn't be looking for nothing to come out of no car like that. You shouldn't buy that car. Because now you're looking for something that does not exist. If a mechanic can't even turn the key over, you shouldn't fuck with it. You know? So yeah, so all of these lessons have a practical application to everyday life. But if a person doesn't have the aptitude and the ability to be able to unlock these lessons and see how they apply to everyday life, then they just gonna be surface dwelling. You know? So let me give you another example. The understanding degree in the 1 to 14s. Why do we let a half original man like Columbus discover the poor part of the planet Earth? Because the original black man is God and owner of the earth and knowing every square inch of it. 790 quadrillion, 613 trillion, 581 billion, 824 million square inches. That's how many inches it is. But knowing every square inch of it, he has chosen for himself the best part. He didn't care about the poor part. Columbus is a half original man born in Italy, which is Southeast Europe. His full name is Christopher Columbus, and the place that he discovers North America, where he founded the Indians who were exiled there 16,000 years ago from India. They are original people too. Now, some people will look at that lesson, like some of these Muslims, and say, well, because Columbus really didn't discover America, because the Indians were already here. And because the original black man, you know, he know every square inch. And, you know, they just repeat what the lesson says and rearrange the shit and then act like they're giving you some understanding. That's what they do. They don't unlock these lessons, and that is why they're not using them. Because they don't know how to use them. And they was mad when the fathers started learning how to unlock these lessons. They was mad. And then teaching it to children and showing them how to do it. You know how embarrassing that is for adults? How embarrassing would that be if you had this for years? And I'm just giving you an example. You had this book for years. And you didn't even know how to unlock it or use it. And along come some children who going all in that book like, and dabbing and shit with it and just going all through it and breaking it down. That shit was embarrassing for some adults. And that's why some of them was mad. That's why some of them was mad. It wasn't just, oh, he's taking the lessons and that's sacred and that's secret. We shouldn't be sharing that with the public. This, that. Nah, y'all just don't know him. Just be real about it. Y'all just don't know them, and you were embarrassed that some children was able to unlock these lessons and show you practical applications to it, and you had it all this time. It was embarrassing. So yeah, so that understanding degree, why do we let a half original man like Columbus discover the poor part of the planet Earth? Some people would just sit there and look at it. Because Columbus, because North America is the poor part. And brother, um, um, you know, because we know every square inch of it, my brother. And Columbus, when he came here, he was looking for India, and the people that he discovered, or he founded, they was already here, brother. Like telling you some shit that you knew in second grade. Like, come on, man, give me some understanding. You a grown ass man. You a grown ass woman. What else do you learn from that lesson? Well, one of the things that you learn from that lesson is one man's trash is another man's treasure. Because that wilderness of North America, which also includes the Caribbean islands and stuff, as well as Canada, true indeed. Because it's Italian ancestry. So yeah, so that wilderness of North America, that wasn't the best part. That shit was a wilderness. I mean, even to this day, when you consider the trading and the bartering that, here in America that they do with other nations, what is their biggest export? It ain't like people is shipping gold and diamonds and shit like that out of North America to these other different countries. This ain't no resourceful place. You know what I'm saying? The biggest export of America is American culture, American ideas. That is the biggest export. Not something that's tangible. You know what I'm saying? So that's considered a poor part. But if you think about it, because we didn't care about the poor part, that shit came back to bite us in the ass. Because it was through Columbus that colonization, the transatlantic slave trade, all of that shit happened for America to be the superpower and for 45 to be sitting on the top of this motherfucker right now. All because we didn't care. But that's why the lesson says, why do we let a half original man like Columbus? Who is the half original man that's like Columbus? It's Farad. So when we realized what was popping over here, after we didn't care, we was like, oh shit. Yo, we gotta send somebody over here. True indeed, Hanif. We gotta send somebody over here after the fact. Because the original man's trash became the colored man's treasure. And he has built an empire here in the wilderness of North America or the Western Hemisphere on the poor part. That's one of the things that this lesson is teaching you. That in some scenarios, that's not the best approach. To not care about the poor part. Because sometimes one man's trash can be another man's treasure. And if you look at something as insignificant, that shit could come back and bite you in the ass. You know? Even when you look at various different societies or kingdoms or institutions, sometimes its downfall was the most unexpected person or unassuming person to bring that shit down. You know, one of the common colloquialisms within our community as black people is a black man with a mop in his hand could go anywhere in the world. Because people don't expect much. You know, that's one of the also reasons why the jester was oftentimes the wisest person in the king's court. Because people ain't expect nothing out of him. He was a clown. He was a clown. That's also why a lot of times comedians are the most intelligent amongst us. Because a lot of times people don't expect much of them. That is also one of the reasons us as a people have been able to excel in a lot of different areas, because a lot of people may have not expected the most out of us. Which means, true indeed, spook that sat by the door. Which means when you don't expect things, you have created blind spots for yourself. And when you create blind spots because you are underestimating others or not expecting things of others, you can always get blindsided. Because now there are things in your peripheral that you just simply don't see. That works to the advantage of the person that's being underestimated. You know what I'm saying? Yup. When you don't care or you're inconsiderate to others' perspectives. True indeed. So that's one of the things that this lesson is teaching us. When you read it and you study it, it's not just about no Columbus and all this other shit. It's telling you about don't take things for granted. Because some things that you consider to be the poor part can come back and bite you in the ass, just like it has done. And that's the reason why Farad was sent to begin with. He's the half original man that was like Columbus, that discovered the poor part of the planet Earth. Not saying that he was the first one there, saying he discovered it. He's seen it for himself. Just like willfully, y'all discover new shit every day because you committed to your growth and development. You know? I discovered something new about one of my students today, my preschoolers. You know what I mean? But all of the lessons function like that. And I love going through the lessons. I love building about different perspectives and what this lesson means and what you gain out of this lesson and showing you how to practically apply it to life. Because this is what living mathematics is about. This is living mathematics. This is not information in the book about some historical events that took place in the past that we need to be mindful of. Nah, what the fuck does that got to do with today? You want to sit and have a long, drawn-out conversation about an oasis somewhere sitting between the root of civilization and the lower Caucasus Mountains? What kind of sense does that make? Share some understanding. Tell us what that actually means. And my rule of thumb is, can you explain it to a child and show, and is that something that's cash and carry for a child? Can you give it to a child right now in a way that they can apply it or work it right now? They can try it out right now. Can you take that knowledge or that information and put it in the form of something for a child that they can put into practice and try out right now if they wanted to? That is understanding. If it's not functional or if it's not practical for a child, what purpose does it serve? And that's why children are a good rule of thumb, because they represent the best part. They represent understanding. Why do they represent understanding? Because if you can make it applicable or practical for a child, then that is evidence of something that is gonna have a potential to exist in the future, because they can see value in it right now. They're growing and developing. They're growing and developing. So if it's something that they can carry, it's showing the potentiality for this to exist in the next generation. But if you're talking about some shit in the past and people sitting there wondering like, okay, why the fuck do I need to know this? It's dead. That has no meaning or significance at all. That's mental masturbation. You're just talking about some shit that has no significance at all. Why do you need to know that? But knowledge should also have wisdom that you can extract from it. It should always have some type of practical, present application to it. I don't care what you're talking about. I could be sitting here looking at a pile of ants and I can draw up a lesson and show you how that applies to your everyday life as a human being. I can do that. I can do that with anything because I can see myself in all things. I can sit there and look at a damn door and draw up something about that door that I can learn about my own life. Oh, you want an example? All right. Sometimes when you're dealing with people, you need to shut the door but don't lock it. Does that make sense to you? Sometimes when you're listening to a person talking about a relationship, you can tell that that door is shut, but it ain't locked. Does that make sense? You can see analogies and correspondences in everything in life because everything is interrelated. But if you are religious, if you are not learning to see self in all things, then you're going to be looking at shit like it ain't got shit to do with me. It has no relationship to me at all. And it's going to be hard for you to understand why this is even something that needs to be discussed, or why is it significant. So think about a lot of our children that go through the school system where they have math classes or whatever, or they have social studies and they learn about American history, this, that, and the third. A lot of that shit is not interesting to them at all because they're sitting there like, why? What the hell does this got to do with me? It does, but they're not being taught the relationship of how that has a correspondence to them. Because if they can see themselves in it, now it becomes interesting. Now they're invested in it because it's about themselves. But if they're not being taught that, then it's going to be separated. It's not going to have any significance. And that's oftentimes what the attitude is with a lot of Muslims that have that Supreme Wisdom book. Those lessons in that Supreme Wisdom book has no relationship to them at all. Because if you ask them to explain how it relates to them, they won't be able to explain it. Because it's separate from them. It's the same way you see children in school and you ask them how do they like math. Usually they're going to be like, no, I don't like it. It's corny. I can't stand my teacher. Yo, you like social studies? No. We be learning about George Washington and stuff like that. And you know, you get those kind of responses. But if you're able to show them like the relationship of these things to themselves, it's like, oh my God. You know, they start having more of an invested interest in it. You know what I mean? One of the ways that I teach them about mathematics is that mathematics is not the paper and the equations and the numbers that you're using. These are just exercises to teach you how to calculate, quantify, and compute reality. You're just using this two-dimensional piece of paper and a pencil to work out problem solving. So it's an exercise in critical thinking. It's teaching you how to problem solve these different equations in life. So the math is not on the paper, it's not on the chalkboard, it's in here. It's a mental system. It's a mental system. So when I start teaching them this and how it works, it's like now it becomes interesting to them because they have a intimate connection or a relationship to it. You know what I'm saying? But that's, you know, And that's the beauty of our supreme mathematics and our supreme alphabet, because the Father was able to show the intimate connection of the relationship and how to break those lessons down using the math and the alphabet. So I started off talking about 13. Today's the 13th. Knowledge and understanding. Master in the alphabet, the letter M. And then I added it up to culture, and I took it to the culture degree. Why did we learn Yakub and his made devil from the root of civilization or the Hot Arabian Desert and into the caves of West Asia, as they now call it Europe? What does it mean in EU and RLPE? How long ago? What did the devil bring with them? What kind of life the devil lived in? And how long before Musa came to teach the devil the forgotten trick knowledge? So I broke that down and showed the relationship of that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we do. So it's not like it's, I don't know. I will that y'all get what I'm explaining to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's why I just wanted so bad to get some of these brothers or sisters on a live like this, so that you can see the difference. We got the same lesson. Share your understanding of that lesson. Tell me what it means to you, and don't just regurgitate or repeat what that lesson said. Give me your understanding. Share that. You know? So, for example, one of our lessons, I'm going to go to the student enrollment. Our student enrollment has 10 questions and answers. One of them, it says, okay, the power lesson, the power degree. What is the total area, square miles of the planet Earth? One of y'all that know that lesson, what is that answer? What is the total area? What is the total area of square miles of the planet Earth? Those of y'all that know the answer, could you put it in the comments, please? The total area of square miles of the planet Earth. Yep, 196,940,000 square miles, right? So now, if you ask the average Muslim that has that lesson, what does that mean? They might be like, well, see, brother, the planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles. You know, that's 196,940,000 square miles. Because that's big, brother. And that's a lot of square miles. It's 196,940,000 square miles, brother. Because when Master Farad Muhammad, our Savior, came, he taught us that the planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles, brother. And we need to know that, because it's a big place. And it's 196,940,000 square miles. Like, that's the kind of bullshit you're going to get. And I'm just telling y'all, that's exactly, I mean, it may be a little bit more colorful, but that's the surface level go-bot bullshit that you're going to get. No understanding at all. None. 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 Right? So now let me give you understanding from just my perspective. If you ask another 5%er, they're going to give you a different understanding. You know what I mean? But this is one perspective of what that means. Where you live at is a square mileage. The city where I dwell is the city of Niagara Falls, New York. It's really a tale of two cities, because you have Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, which is split by the Niagara River. But the city of Niagara Falls on the American side is only 16 square miles. So that's a little bit more than half a marathon. It's not that large, right? When you're introduced with the fact that the planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles, psychologically it reorientates you in terms of the sense of resources, the sense of possibilities, the sense of opportunities, and it allows you to think more globally beyond your location. It also puts you in a position where you might want to consider exploring other different places that are beyond your square mileage where you actually reside. So now that is the fifth lesson, which is power in our mathematics. Power is force and influence. But when you're looking at it in terms of landscape, you're also considering power dynamics because that landscape also represents resources. So when you're learning this lesson about 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth, you're also starting to consider the resources and why there may be a chronic scarcity of resources in some places, and why you may see some people who dominate and control the resources, the institutions associated with those resources, and the economy that distributes those resources. All of those things start to come into play when you're just considering the square miles of the planet Earth outside of the location where you actually live, right? So now considering that and thinking about power, resources, institutions, economies, you start considering power dynamics. Like I said, you're going to recognize that there are certain places where there is a chronic scarcity of resources. We live on this planet. But yet you have some people who have a vested interest that also have more control over those resources that are not being equally distributed amongst all the human families of the planet Earth. If you didn't even know that this is the dimensions of your home, you may not even consider shit like that. Especially in relationship to power, because that's the fifth lesson. You get all of that from just doing research, having the mathematics, and having the lessons and seeing the correspondence. But again, if you don't have that, you're just going to be sitting there, the planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles. And that's what the master, Farad Muhammad, taught us in 1930, 1931, 1932, 1930. Like, come on, man. Come on. What does that mean to you right now? How do you apply it to your life right now? Because if you can't use those lessons, what is the reason why you even have them? And that is also one of the reasons why you don't see members of the Nation of Islam today even using those lessons or speaking them the way that I'm speaking them. For one, they ain't got no mathematics. They ain't got no alphabet. They don't have language to do it. But at the same time, they don't see the value in it. They don't see how it is applied to their everyday life. I just showed you a simple example of how looking at the planet Earth being 196,940,000 square miles broadens your perspective and psychologically orientates you to start thinking about resources, about institutions, economies, about power dynamics amongst people who are in positions to control or dominate those resources, and where you need to position yourself in relationship to that, especially if you are not of the people who have control of those resources, who are in the position where you're establishing some type of institutions, or you are invested in the economy to build wealth. You learn all of that from looking at that lesson. I do. I learn all of that learning from that. So now let me show you this. That fifth lesson, you break 5 down to 1 and 4. You take 1 and 4 to the 14th degree in the 1 to 40s. Who are the 85%? They are the uncivilized people, poisonous animal eaters, slaves from a mental death and power, those who do not know the true and living God or their origin in this world and worship what they know not, who are easily led in the wrong direction but hard to lead in the right direction. Now look at the relationship of that lesson to what I just shared. They are the uncivilized people, poisonous animal eaters, slaves from a mental death and power. You see the relationship? One of the reasons why they're categorized as that is because they don't see the relationship or the power dynamics in that lesson that I just pointed out. All of these lessons connect and relate like that if you are being taught the appropriate way and studying them. But again, you got some people with them being fossils in a book. They're relics to some folks. And the reason why I get on their ass when they say shit is because since the 60s, when our nation formally began, and I say formally because since classical civilization and indigenous societies, we've recognized that we was a true and living God in the earth, but just not in this particular form that the Father actually fashioned for us. But since our formal inception, we've held fast to the tradition and the customs of manifesting these lessons since the 60s, and we have not wavered in that. We have not wavered in that. We have not been on some bullshit like, okay, let's not deal with these lessons no more. It's all about Dianetics and Scientology. We're going to put that first. Because the Dianetics and the Scientology, brother, is going to give us the ability to be able to break down them lessons. And for us to just come to me. Just come to us. We've been doing this shit since the 60s. You don't need L. Ron Hubbard and shit like that. And Scientology to remove engrams and all, go clear and all of that. You don't need all of that shit. Just come to the 5%. We've been doing this. We've been doing that. But yet you got a whole movement. And it's disheartening, like I said. And everything that I'm saying, is what it is. You know? Everything is what it is. You know? And I study Dianetics. I study everything. I study the Satanic Bible and all of that shit. I study everything. Because as scientists of life, that's what we do. We study the science of everything in life. But we ain't putting it before our math and our alphabet in 120. No, we ain't doing that. We're going to look at whatever that is through the lens of our mathematics, our alphabet in 120. That's what we going to do. But we ain't going to switch our foundation up. Anybody that you see doing that, their foundation was weak to begin with. And that's unfortunately what you see.